All right, so we're getting pretty close here to the hour. My Apple Watch, which keeps telling me to breathe deeply, it must sense some stress in me or something. I don't know. It just keeps giving more messages to breathe deeply. Um, but in any event, thank you for all who are joining us today. And just as a reminder, to just cross-reference, if you don't mind putting in to the chat box your team member names and your location and your positions in the facility. So this is the continuation of the ECHO COVID Action Network, or affectionately known as ECHO CAN, and we're in phase 2, and we're marching along here with the alignment of our quality improvement. Today we're on step 11 of the CMS QAPI at a glance, and our title today is Getting to Know the Root of the Problem, and we will continue discussions as part of our collaboration to talk about social isolation, PIP. But if you say that fast enough, it really becomes a tongue twister. And for our participants who are from out of North Dakota, I just wanted to tell you that I have not put away my ice skates. You know, we're having freezing temperatures these next 3 days. And I also have my ice fishing pole at the ready just in case. So in any event, just because of some scheduling issues, our peer mentors are going to present firstly today. So Cindy from WSCHEC, can we hand it off to you?
Sure can. Hi, everyone. So as a mentor facility, we meet on Mondays with Dr. Jervik and his team, and kind of review what we're going to talk about this week. And one of the things that we talked about this last Monday was participation in this project. As a facility here participating, one of the questions was, what do you feel and what would you like to say? And honestly, we said that we feel like we're being held back because there aren't a lot of facilities participating in this, verbally participating. We are all long-term care facilities. We're all in the same boat. We like to share, and we would love for all of you to share. We're a collaboration of facilities. And maybe what you're doing in your facility is working, and we'd sure love to know that. And we certainly would love to share what we're doing in our facility. So we invite all of you to become more verbal and share with what you're doing in your facilities. We're wrapping up our loneliness project now. You know, what is working in your building? What have you changed? We noticed in our last review that we have had improvement in loneliness in our facility, and we are going to share next week what we are doing in our building. But I know that all of you out there are doing something that's working, and we'd love to know what it is, because we probably would incorporate the same thing in our facility. All of us are long-term care. We all work in the same entity. We all have the same problems, and we would love for everyone out there to really get on board now and start sharing verbally or in the chat what's going on in your buildings and what you're doing.
That's great, Cindy. Appreciate the feedback, and that's really hitting the nail on the head. Is that we want to identify, best practices, share those, and not only share the root cause analysis. As we learned earlier this week that a facility identified ventilation issues as a source of a COVID outbreak. So, it raises the question, well, how was that root cause analysis evolved, and what can we learn, from that? And similarly, as you mentioned, Cindy, the the PIP that we collectively chose to focus on social isolation and using measurements, using a tool that will measure the social isolation and then before and then after the intervention. So I think that's really, really good. Does anybody else have any other comments about that? I think one of the things that we're reflecting on are some of the barriers, right? To doing QAPI on a routine basis. We certainly have had good feedback, about multiple things, like we have an outbreak, and so we have to focus on that, or we're understaffed habitually, and that's an ongoing issue, or we've had a reduction in our patient or resident census. There are all these things that are coming on time and time again. And one of the things that we're reflecting on is methodologies or even behavioral interventions that will routinize or make it a regular practice to think about quality improvement. So one of the things that we were and have been advocating is using the walk rounds as a opportunity to initiate root cause analysis or to come up with thoughts about interventions. So do we have our next slide here for the agenda? Yeah, so I want you to think about this, and we'd like to get a little bit more information about what your experiences have been, so identifying what your barriers are, and you can certainly put those in the chat box. We also want to get feedback from everybody when you yourself can present something from your facility. So we would like to, I don't want to particularly say do some arm twisting. We actually have nice boxes of candy, so we have positive incentivization, which, by the way, as a sideline, I don't know if anybody knows this, but apparently United Airlines just announced a raffle of sorts for free lifetime air travel from United Airlines if you submit your vaccine information. So you basically just have to take a picture of your vaccination card and submit that to the Mileage Plus program. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I submitted my Pfizer vaccine card, hoping I get worldwide travel, because I have a daughter in London, England, that I dearly love to visit her and the grandchildren. Okay, so yeah, we just want to try and ramp up the feedback, right? We get a lot of we got good strong participation on a regular basis here, but we want to try to get a little bit more engagement if you can. So we'd like you to just think about case studies, stories. So that's why we ask each week, what happened in your walk rounds. I mean, it could be just something very mundane, but if you can share that, I think that those are points of discussion. And again, reflecting on what's worked, what was an aha moment, like something like, holy smokes. As Cindy had said, the aha moment for them was discovering that they had, what was it, 67% or whatever they evaluated. So 2/3 of their residents had expressed some forms of social isolation and loneliness. So that was an aha moment, and they addressed it with a small intervention, a one-on-one visitation. Right? I mean, there's other opportunities. We talked a little bit about the project that University of North Dakota is doing, where we're trying to create student and faculty drawings or doodles that we're hoping to transmit as, to facilities to use that as either recreational therapy for coloring or for decorating rooms, and see if that moves the needle on engagement and social isolation. So yeah, all these ideas can kind of come together, and we can work collectively on that. The other issue that we had in our discussion, by the way, was who likes which tools. So I personally was amazed that nobody likes the fishbone for root cause analysis. I guess maybe because I enjoy fishing, I like the fishbone analysis, but a lot of other folks like the 5 whys, and so we want to get that kind of feedback, right, as to what works for you. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that as to what works, and the other part that I'm interested in is, do you use these forms? Do you download them electronically, or do you use a hard copy? I mean, that's the whole methodology. How do you use your QAPI tools? So that's another kind of feedback that we would like, because as you remember, we did the readiness for QAPI, and we've got most people said they're on their way, and so we want to move the needle from those that are on their way to doing this as a routine everyday practice. So Kelly and Michelle, do you want to comment about those thoughts?
I'll just quickly add, and we're going to talk a little bit more about, in the QI portion, because we do want your feedback, and we're going to work with whatever you're telling us. And since we were hearing that, most people use a 5 whys, from someone in the facilities I talked to, don't like the fishbone. So I'm going to feature another version of the 5 whys today, and also just a list. There are all kinds of root cause analysis tools out there. It doesn't have to be one of those two. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm going to provide a list, and we'll go through real quickly. But my point being, tell us what you want. That's all we're here for, is to make life just a little bit easier for you. So please share and use this time to your benefit.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Kelly, did you have any additional thoughts?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think Michelle's got it covered. One root cause analysis tool, I think that, and I'm not sure if it's on your list, Michelle, I'll look whenever you put that slide up, but back in the first phase of this series, I showed a simple flow diagram or a simple flow chart, and really it's easy to mark out what each step of a process is. So if you're trying to find your gap in a process, that is another way to utilize a root cause analysis tool, is to find that gap in the process. You just chart step by step and oh, wait, this is where our struggle is. We're missing this step.
Yeah, thanks. And just as to reinforce this concept is, so what we want to do is collect these root cause analyses and share them as a group, because then you can look at that and say, interesting. This facility found this issue, and I wonder if that's happening at our facility. So sometimes things can surface. It's sort of like the worms popping up out of the ground after a rain. You don't always see them until it comes out and rains. So I don't know, maybe a bad analogy, but that's sort of the concept of what we're trying to get at here. And again, trying to make the relationship between worms and fishing, in my mind, I guess, is part of it. Okay, why don't we move on to the next slide here. So in the chat box, or if you can unmute yourself and just share with us if you learned anything from walk rounds this past week. So we'll just give you a couple of seconds here to provide some feedback. I'm always kind of feeling with this question as to whether probably everybody's doing walk rounds at the end of the week rather than the beginning of the week. So maybe this is a question that doesn't get answered so much. When we talked about this, the walk rounds were with some facilities that were done weekly, some were done daily. And again, the idea behind the walk rounds is that you want to identify issues or solutions, right? So is there anything that, and they need to be or ought to be done in a structured fashion. So yeah, thanks, Cindy, for providing some feedback. You identified needing more education on dementia. Yeah, yeah, the staff are forgetting the basics. Well, that's a little bit of a cognitive impairment right there. Yeah, interestingly, I'm giving a presentation tomorrow to caregivers in South Dakota as part of their National Alzheimer's Association effort there. And yeah, one of the things that we talk about is in dementia care are nonverbal communication, right? So one of the things for staff members always to recall is keeping their eyebrows raised, right? Particularly with masks. You know, you don't want people with furrowed eyebrows or angered looks because in a cognitively impaired resident, that could really lead to body language interpretation of anger or of confrontation. So those are good.
Dr. Juravich, since you're talking about some of that nonverbal communication, you know, guys, I know you want to do you do need a structured walk around, but also you really have a greater opportunity to identify maybe staff behaviors, or if you're not doing it at the same time every day. Because if the staff know, hey, Kelly's coming down the hall at 9:15 every morning, I have to make sure this hall is in shape because she's going to call me out on it, then they're going to do that at 9:15 every day. But if you make your round the next day at 12:30, you may catch some of those missteps that way too. Not that we're out there just trying to find staff making mistakes, but then you can determine, hey, this is an area we need to focus on. Maybe they have their schedule set where I do A, B, and C in the morning, and I do it that way so I don't get caught with my pants down, so to speak. But I don't do it at this time because I know nobody's coming behind me to check it. So just a thought when you're thinking about walking around is that, yeah, they need to be structured so you can be consistent. But at the same time, I would consider doing them at different times of the day.
Yeah, that's really a good point. And the other thing, I don't know if you guys want to comment about the reliability of PIPs or, you know, the QAPI process. You know, so walk-arounds could also be potentially used for reliability. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, you know, we talked previously about the atypical manifestations in older residents with COVID, right? You know, they're more likely to have loss of appetite. They're more likely to fall. They're more likely to have confusional states, and confusional states can be associated with withdrawal, what we call hypoactive delirium. And so just asking staff on your walk-arounds, tell me the atypical signs of COVID in older adults, and see what kind of response you get. You know, and you should have a checklist of those atypical signs and see if they get them, right? Because then that'll let you know that they recognize, you know, issues related to both atypical presentations of disease for COVID, but also for influenza or any type of infection. It could be a urinary bladder infection, right? You know, older adults don't present with fever. You know, so if somebody said atypical manifestation of infection in our residents is, you know, fever, cough, and shortness of breath, those are typical representations. But again, in older adults, 50% don't even have a fever. So you have to rely upon things like loss of appetite or taking to bed as good examples. Okay, well, I hope everybody's doing walk rounds and that they're structured, that you have a little list of questions that you're going to ask, and also that you explicitly convey to the staff that you know, we're looking for solvable issues, and if you see something wrong, this is not a tattling you know, exercise, but rather one of identifying fixable problems.
Absolutely. And Dr. Juravich, I would also add, share your walk around checklist with your line staff, because 9 times out of 10, people don't want to do something wrong. And so if they have it, they practice it, they see it in front of them, then chances are it'll be more successful when you're making those rounds too.
Yeah. And we've talked about also deputizing people and having them do the walk rounds on your behalf. So that's good. Okay, why don't we move on? So today we're going to present the Institute for Healthcare Improvement curriculum. This is part one of the connection between emotional intelligence and stress response. And again, this is the most often requested training, for leadership, as to really how to deal with the emotional PPEs, as we call it. And then we'll have our quality improvement mentors here talk about getting to the root of the problem. And then finally, we're trying to wrap up our social isolation PIP. We have 6 or 7 of them so far out of the 30 or so participants. So we've got a ways to go to get everybody on board with the intervention. So why don't you go ahead, Sarah, and let's head into the curriculum here.
We're talking, this is step 11 on the QAPI at a glance. And you know that we have been talking about root cause analysis almost through the whole entire series here. So I'm not going to focus a lot of time on this, other than the fact that we've had this brief discussion this morning or this afternoon about this. But just a reminder, root cause analysis is that term used to describe a systematic process for identifying the causes that contribute to our variations in performance. So we have RCA teams that understand the most immediate or seemingly obvious reason for a problem and want to work on that, but that's not always the real reason that the event occurred. And that's the whole point of this root cause analysis, is to dig deeper and deeper, looking for the reasons behind the reasons. This process will generally lead to the identification of more than one root cause. And those root causes and any contributing factors can be then sorted into categories to facilitate different types of interventions that can make those improvements. Next slide. So I'm just mentioning again that top 10 problems encountered by quality improvement teams by Dr. Moran, who with the Public Health Foundation. He has a notation in his article about root cause analysis is often just treating the symptom instead of doing root cause analysis to get to the in-depth problem. We want this to be a structured investigation that gets to that true cause and actions that we need to incorporate to eliminate that with a permanent fix, rather than continuing to deal with the symptoms on an ongoing basis. In root cause analysis, we need to determine what happened, why it happened, and how to eliminate it so it won't happen again. He uses the words treating the symptom might provide a temporary fix, but it just masks the real cause. So I think of, somebody with congestive heart failure, and if we are just noticing that they have swollen feet, and we are just working to, elevate those feet and put maybe wraps on them without looking to see what's going on and what's contributing to those swollen feet, we're getting us through, we're getting us by, but we're not really solving the problem by doing an in-depth assessment and finding out that there's probably really problems with that heart that we need to address. Next slide. As I mentioned, because I was talking to one of the facilities last week who doesn't like 5 Whys, and then our whole group said that, or doesn't like the fishbone, I went through and just pulled together a whole list of some potential root cause analysis tools. Most of these can be found in the IHI resource QI essential tools. I think I might have thrown a few more into those, but if you have time and just take a look at some of these, and one of them strikes your interest and you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out to Kelly or I or Jean, or let us know as a group, and we can talk about it together on these calls. So just a big long list.
Sorry to interrupt, Michelle, but it just occurred to me that with this menu, that this might actually be a QAPI team exercise, to review these, or, maybe even if whoever the QAPI leader is to maybe take 4 or 5 of these and say, hey, let's vote on this. Which one do we want to use? So that, again, not putting the burden on just one person, but rather, having engagement with more than one, and also from multiple departments. So, sorry.
No, great, thank you. Next slide. As I mentioned, we have heard that a lot of people do use 5 Whys, and we've shared a couple of different types. I did find this tool in a process handbook from Health Insight, which is another QIO, and it's a really good, the whole handbook is very good and walks you through lots of steps of performance improvement. But I thought this is an interesting way to write out 5 Whys, and I just thought I'd share. They have a blank copy in the book. This is one that's filled out as an example here. So and there's the link for the Health Insight document there. We'll go to the next slide.
And the link's in the chat too, for those of you who can't copy it off the screen, the link for that and the IHI tools.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And we are going to skip over this one because Wishik is going to share next week where they're at with their PIP. And Cindy was on top of stuff and sent it to me today, so I hurried up and sent it in, but we'll wait until next week. And so here we have, as Dr. Jurevich was mentioning, some of the interventions that have been submitted. And we just wanted to share those with all of you. I would love to have anybody unmute that has incorporated these and how that has gone with what, has it improved? That if you've been checking your social isolation numbers, what you have seen. So please share in chat or unmute. I'd love to hear your voice.
So just to quickly jump in, the smiling masks really intrigue me. So I don't know who did smiling masks, but I just want to, from a medical director's point of view, I already see 2 PIPs occurring there. So you're getting 2 birds with 1 stone, or whatever. And what I mean by that is that you have your measurement of social isolation. So you're asking 6 to 10 to 12 residents questions from the UCLA loneliness survey, right? The modified version, the short version of that. And then you test the intervention as to whether the smiling masks reduce the score, the collective score on that. However, there's another approach here. So let's say you apply the smiling masks on a memory care unit, or with dementia patients. The intervention there can test the possibility that you're reducing behavioral disorders. And so there's a tool called the Neuropsych Inventory, NPI, that you would use, and you would measure that, let's say on, again, 10 to 12 patients. You'd measure the NPI. It's a checklist. Do they have this behavior? Do they wander? Do they get angry when touched? Stuff like that. And then you do the mask with the smile on it, intervention. And then after a week or so, then you re-examine those 10 to 12 residents with the Neuropsych Inventory and see if that score has gone down. So here you have 2 PIPs in one. So this is a level of efficiency that would generate, like I say, a couple of quality interventions or quality outcomes with just one intervention. So congratulations on the smiling mask idea. And I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more. But, so I want to just hand off if any of the facilities had done these PIP interventions here. And if you want to comment on those, that'd be great.
Going back just a bit to the root cause analysis, Kelly had mentioned to me that she has a root cause analysis story to share. If you,
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I know we were kind of going backwards. Sorry, I didn't jump in earlier whenever we were still talking about that. So when I was still in the facility, we had a survey. We got cited for one of our residents keeping some of his skin medication in his room. He had it in a lockbox, but the lockbox wasn't locked. So in an immediate sense, we said, oh my gosh, we can't find the key. So we just, we got a new lockbox, gave him the key again. And then part of our intervention was we just checked this box every single day. So you have somebody in there every single day, multiple times a day, checking this box. Had we done a root cause analysis to determine the reason behind him losing his keys, then we could have saved ourselves a lot of time, because all we actually had to do was provide him with a keychain to loop on his belt. He was a maintenance man all his life. He was used to carrying keys on his self, but he had no way to hold on to it at that point in time. And so he would set it down and lose it because it wasn't familiar to his normal day-to-day practices. But we didn't look into it well enough in the immediate sense. So we write a plan of corrections that says we're in there multiple times a day. And it just took a lot of time and resources. And I guess my point is, in that moment, when you're writing a plan of corrections, you're like, okay, we got to get it done, fix the situation, put an intervention in place. But I don't think we dig down deep enough to see why the deficient practice was cited to begin with, because we could really save a lot of time and resources if we did that. So after we did our 3 months of monitoring through QAPI and checking the room and all of that, then we were able to just move forward. But it wouldn't have been necessary to put that in place had we really done a root cause analysis. So I just wanted to provide a real life example of a time when I'm like, why didn't I just do that then? It would have saved so much time.
So I assume that these interventions, these social isolation PIPs, are going to be matched with a post-intervention assessment with the UCLA loneliness tool that we introduced. So I think our team will reach out to the facilities that did submit these and just see where we're at with the reassessment period. Again, all of these interventions should be done in small cycles of change. We call them plan, do, study, act cycles. And they have to be very short periods of intervention, maybe 1 to 4 weeks maximum. And then you test them to see, you reevaluate. So whatever tool you use to identify the problem, you then come back with that same tool. In our case, for isolation, it was the UCLA isolation tool. So we want to compare the numbers and see if we move the needle towards less social isolation. Now, you don't have to always use numbers, right? You can use what we call qualitative feedback. And so just by simply asking, the residents, how are you feeling? Are you feeling a little bit more engaged, or whatever questions you want to ask that, in whatever language, or, level that you interact, you can use that as feedback too. So I just wanted to mention, it doesn't always have to be a checkbox or a checklist. It could be qualitative feedback, from them. Okay, Michelle, sorry.
I don't have anything more right now. Maybe we could try and get to the video, if that's working, Sarah.
Yeah, and as Sarah's trying to get the video up there. So again, we're offering mentorship. If your team wants to set up a separate meeting, just let our staff know, and we'll make an arrangement for that. Okay, so Sarah, you're good here?
Hi there, my name is Paige Hector, and along with Angela Devaney, I am excited to bring this module, Emotional and Organization Support, to you as part of the continuation phase of Project ECHO. In this session, Angela and I will cover these objectives. I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence and the relationship to the biological stress response, explain how the stress response, how it's connected to well-being, and the concepts of intentional noticing. Angela will talk about improvement questions designed to get feedback, and she'll talk about domains and requests that matter most to staff. We've got a lot to cover. Here's an overview of the weekly content for this module. We do recommend that you follow the weekly sessions in this designated order. So before we get into the content for today, let's take a quick moment and see if you have any questions or immediate needs from last week. What's the top of mind for you? Is there anything particularly pressing or that you'd like some help with? Remember to reach out to your training centers, as we are all here to help support you. In order to make our time together as interactive as possible, we'll start off with a discussion question based on the weekly topic. So for this week, how would you describe the biological stress response? This slide I did show in the first week's content, and I thought it was important enough to show it again. I just want to point out that mental health care is something that's so important to all of us. And report after report and study after study is all showing that there is incredible stress and perhaps even trauma across the country, and especially with healthcare workers. That people are worrying about the negative impact of COVID-19 on their mental health, or having trouble sleeping and other somatic complaints. So this is really concerning to me, as it is to many of my colleagues, and I'm sure all to you. I am hopeful that with these modules and this work through the continuation phase of Project ECHO, that we can seek to change some of this and normalize talking about mental health care and well-being. So what is emotional intelligence? Well, there's lots of definitions, and I've included just a few very simple ones here. The ability to understand and manage your emotions. That's pretty simple. I'm not so sure it's simple to do, however. The ability to communicate, read, and navigate social situations and conflict. So ultimately, it's how we interact within ourselves and with each other, especially during times of conflict and difficult social situations. And how do we increase our emotional intelligence? Well, the pandemic has given us many opportunities to work on this, both at work and at home. It's related also to our stress response. So when we can better understand what is happening to our bodies, our biological stress response, and increasing that awareness, we can actually increase our emotional intelligence, which allows us to be more present, to respond better, especially in times of conflict and stress and frustration. And it gives us more sense of what we call agency, of being in charge and choosing how to respond. But first, I need to do a little bit of work around that to notice. You know, this is what our threat looks like now. We can't even see it without an electron microscope. When you think about the biological stress response, if I said to you, the fight, flight, freeze syndrome, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know that. Well, that's the biological stress response, that we're not fighting for our lives from bears and tigers anymore. Literally, it's something like this that we can't even see without a microscope. So what actually happens in the brain? And I think this is fascinating. Once I really began to understand this process and what happens when we feel stress, it began to put a series of events into place for me to understand how to better respond when we are feeling stressed, because I understood it better. So basically, there's two parts of your brain that play here. The amygdala, that's the part of your brain that keeps you safe. It's considered our emotional brain. Some of you may actually know it as the reptilian brain. So when we get stressed or anxious or angry, that little part of your brain, it literally takes over and everything else shuts down. Well, that's a good thing, because its purpose is to keep you safe. But the problem is that when the amygdala takes over, that prefrontal cortex that you see there, literally in the front of your brain, that part of your brain shuts down. It like it goes offline. The switch is shut off. That's the part of your brain that allows you to make good decisions. It allows you to engage in problem solving and critical thinking skills. So you can see that the constant stress of the pandemic has really wreaked havoc with our biological stress response. So we get all sorts of input from our environment, you know, whether it's sights and sounds and situations. All of this is coming in barraging us literally day after day for over a year now. And our thoughts and sensations, we get triggered. So basically, I talked about triggers last week, that anything in the environment or a sensation on the inside can cause you to feel like you are back right in the actual event itself, even if there's no imminent danger. That's what the reptilian brain does, the amygdala. So we have all this stress and anger and anxiety and fear, and all of this is running around. I think of it like your brain in the hamster wheel. It's just circulating so quickly. Your amygdala is going to burst into action when it perceives a threat or some kind of danger in the environment. The biology is going to react the same, whether or not there's actually a threat or not, or the perception of a threat. It's going to react in one of these ways. We're going to fight if we think we can ward off the supposed attacker. If not, we run away, or we simply flee. When we hit this level of interaction, everyone, the amygdala is now in charge, and this happens automatically. So here's a good time to kind of pause and ask yourselves or have some dialogue. What stresses you out at work? How do you know that you're stressed? Like, what happens to your body and your mind? What are the signals that tell you that other people are stressed? All of those emotions and sensations, those actually live in what we might call the lower functioning part of the brain, the amygdala, the reptilian brain.
So I was going to mention, I put into the chat box some of the issues about biologic stress. Actually, believe it or not, my research is about physiologic stress at a very cellular level. And I can tell you that with age, the stress response to protect cells goes down with age. The other thing that's real interesting is that the people who live the longest have very high parasympathetic nervous system activity. So there's this kind of a fight between sympathetic and parasympathetic. And so there's a reason why people who have a lot of anxiety have shorter lifespans. You know, that's why they keep promoting the idea of, stress relaxation, things like yoga. People who live to 100, they've surveyed them and have found that they have very low stress levels. I mean, even in face of like catastrophic events in their lives, they all take it in stride. And so their emotional IQ, if you will, has been either developed through either childhood and upbringing, or through adaptive processes and behavior changes that they made in their own life. And so I think it's always important to think about, just taking those timeouts, those moments for self kind of affirmation of, deep breathing. I mean, like I say, my Apple Watch has been actually an interesting blessing. I think my daughters recognize that I have pretty high stress levels. I'm kind of achievement oriented. And so they got me the Apple Watch, which tells me to breathe 4 times a day. You take those deep breaths, you hold it for 3 seconds, exhale, and do that for 3 seconds. There's other interventions, by the way, that can help with wellness. I know, for example, at the University of North Dakota, they have each semester they have a kind of a contest where teams are formed of 5 individuals. They team up and they measure how many steps after 2 months that they've accumulated. And so they have a board that shows where the steps are as part of their physical activity wellness. So that's something that might be kind of fun, where you divide your staff up into different teams, and the teams with the most steps gets a prize. So that would be a wellness intervention. There's another intervention that we use at the medical school. We call it Zen on 10. And so it's pretty much a yoga / meditation for 10 minutes. So it doesn't take much. I mean, to sort of activate what I call the parasympathetic nervous system. So these are all different, techniques that you can use. So I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that or have any other stories about facility related wellness programs. So I know that one facility reportedly was using the facility psychologist as a resource, and so staff members could contact the psychologist who was offering basically free consultations. So that was another adaptive intervention, and again, those could be PIPs, in terms of measuring stress levels amongst staff and before and after an intervention.